The Zorth Dominion had conquered over 50 star systems without resistance. They were an empire built on superiority, their war fleets unmatched, their technology centuries ahead of any primitive species they encountered. Every world they came across either surrendered or was obliterated, until they met humans. When the first Terran distress signal was intercepted, the Zorth assumed it was another weakling race begging for mercy. A small, unimportant system at the edge of the galaxy had fallen under their control, and they had expected no real trouble from the scattered colonies there. Their fleets moved in, expecting an easy victory. But then, something unexpected happened. A single Terran warship entered the system. It was unlike anything the Zorth had ever seen. A towering behemoth of metal and fire, bristling with weapons far beyond the expected technological level of such a young species. Its hull bore scars of past battles, yet it moved with deadly precision. It did not send diplomats. It did not beg for negotiations. It did not ask for peace. It broadcasted a single message in a calm, emotionless tone. You have made a grave mistake. The Zorth fleet, numbering in the dozens, closed in on the lone warship, confident in their superiority. They laughed at the audacity of this primitive race. The battle began, and the Zorth learned fear. The Zorth commanders watched the human warship on their displays, scanning its structure for weaknesses. It was large. Too large for a species they had barely acknowledged before. But its size meant nothing if it was outgunned. The Dominion had destroyed empires before. A single ship was an insult. Their fleet of 50 war cruisers and attack drones moved in, surrounding the Terran vessel from all angles. Standard protocol. Overwhelm the target, hammer it with plasma fire until nothing remained. Their weapons locked on. Fire. The void exploded with energy as the Zorth unleashed their barrage. Plasma bolts, ion torpedoes, and disruptor beams raced toward the human warship, a storm of death designed to tear through planetary defenses, let alone a lone ship. Then something happened. The human warship didn't dodge. It didn't raise shields. It let the Zorth fire, and the projectiles stopped. Not all of them, but enough. Beams of light bent away, missiles detonated mid-flight, and plasma rounds fizzled out before impact. The ones that made it through struck its hull, but instead of crumpling, the ship absorbed the damage and kept moving. Aboard the Zorth flagship, Admiral Kazil's mandibles twitched in confusion. "This is impossible," one of his officers stammered. "No species can withstand a full strike from a Dominion fleet." But the human ship wasn't just surviving. It was analyzing. And then it retaliated. A single volley erupted from the Terran warship's main cannons. Not a swarm of wild, scattered fire. Not a desperate counterattack. A calculated, ruthless response. The first Zorth warcruiser vanished. No explosion, no debris. Just gone, as if something had erased it from existence. The second and third followed a second later. Then a fourth. Panic spread through the fleet. The Zorth had never seen their ships destroyed so effortlessly, so clinically. Their shields, advanced by thousands of years of research, meant nothing. Their formations, which had crushed entire armadas, were useless. Admiral Kazil's cold blood turned to ice. We are losing," an officer whispered. The human warship continued its march forward, tearing through the Zorth fleet like a predator dismantling prey. The Dominion, the unstoppable conquerors, had become the hunted. And for the first time in their history, the Zorth realized. They were not the apex predators of the galaxy. They had just woken something far worse. The silence aboard the Zorth flagship was suffocating. Admiral Kazil's mandibles clenched as he watched his fleet crumble before his eyes. One by one, His warcruisers vanished under the onslaught of the human warship's firepower. His mind, honed by decades of military strategy, failed to process what was happening. This was not how battles were fought, not against the Dominion. "Pull back," he roared. "Regroup and analyze their weapons." The remaining Zorth ships desperately shifted formations, their commanders scrambling to adjust. This was not just an engagement. It was survival. But the human warship gave them no time. Another volley erupted from its cannons. This time, the Zorth watched in horror as space itself seemed to warp around the blasts. Shields, hulls, entire ships. None of it mattered. The human weapons did not simply destroy, they erased. Kazil's second-in-command, Commander Zir, turned toward him, her eyes wide with something the Zorth never felt before. Dread. "Admiral," she whispered, "we have underestimated them." Kazil slammed his claws onto the control panel. "Impossible! Their species is young! Their technology is primitive!" "They are not primitive," Zir corrected, her voice shaking. "They have been preparing." The realization hit Kazil like a plasma bolt to the chest. This warship, this monstrosity, was not the desperate last stand of a doomed species. It was a message. The humans knew about the Dominion. They had studied them, and they had sent a single warship, not as a fight for survival, but as a warning. Kazil's claws curled inward. If a single human warship could do this, what would a fleet of them look like? "We must retreat," Zir urged. "Now." Kazil's pride screamed in defiance. The Zorth never retreated. But his survival instinct, buried under centuries of arrogance, finally won. "Send a full system retreat command," he growled. "All remaining vessels, fall back to the nearest relay point." But as the transmission was sent, the human warship did something terrifying. It let them go. The attacks stopped. The last few Zorth ships, barely holding together, limped away. No pursuit, no further destruction. Just silence. And then another transmission came through from the human vessel. "This was a warning. If you return, we will not be so merciful." The message ended. The human warship simply hovered there, as if daring them to test its patience. Kazil clenched his claws, his body rigid with a strange, foreign feeling. The Zorth had faced many species, had crushed countless civilizations. Never had they been spared. Never had they been the ones warned. As the last of his fleet jumped to warp, one terrible thought burned in his mind. The Zorth Dominion had just found an enemy they couldn't conquer. And worse, they had no idea just how many more of these humans were waiting in the dark. The Zorth Dominion had never known fear. They had ruled the galaxy for millennia, their fleets carving a path of destruction through any civilization foolish enough to resist them. And yet, as Admiral Kazil sat in the shattered remains of his war room, the echoes of battle still ringing in his ears, he knew that something had changed. The human warship had done more than destroy his fleet. It had shattered the very foundation of Dominion supremacy. Reports flooded in from the surviving vessels. Scans of the Terran warship revealed technology that defied explanation. Its weapons did not merely destroy, they unmade matter, warping physics in ways the Zorth's best scientists couldn't comprehend. Its defenses had shrugged off a full-force barrage from the most advanced war fleet in the Dominion. And worst of all, it had let them go. Why? Kazil's claws dug into the metallic surface of his command console. The Zorth did not show mercy. Mercy was weakness. It was submission. Yet that single human warship had spared them, not out of kindness, but because it had no need to finish them off. It was a warning. The Zorth had always believed themselves to be the apex predators of the galaxy. Every species they encountered had fallen before them, their worlds reduced to lifeless husks, or absorbed into the ever-expanding Dominion. But the humans? The humans had just rewritten the rules. Kazil turned toward Commander Zur, who stood rigid beside him. She had been silent for most of their retreat, her mandibles clenched tight, her black eyes unreadable. Now, she spoke in a low, measured voice. "We must inform the High Council." Kazil let out a slow breath, the weight of the situation pressing against his chest. The High Council did not take failure lightly. He had lost an entire fleet against a single enemy warship. His very existence might be erased simply to prevent the spread of weakness within the Dominion. But this was larger than him, larger than his failure. "This will change everything," he muttered. Zir gave a slight nod. "If we do not act carefully, it may be the end of the Dominion itself." The word sent a ripple of unease through the command deck. The end of the Dominion? Unthinkable. And yet Kazil could not deny it. Even with their advanced technology, even with their vast numbers, the Zorth had never encountered a force like the humans. They had assumed this would be another easy conquest, an insignificant species on the fringes of the galaxy, barely worth their attention. But the humans had been watching, studying, preparing. This warship had not been an accident. It had been sent. A single vessel, powerful enough to dismantle an entire Dominion fleet, positioned in a system the Zorth had thought defenseless. How many more were there? His thoughts darkened as he considered the worst-case scenario. If humans had fleets of these warships, the Dominion's empire could be torn apart in weeks. "We must negotiate," Zir said carefully. Kazil's head snapped toward her. "You suggest submission?" "I suggest survival," she corrected. "We do not know how deep their power runs. If we attack again, and they send a fleet instead of a single warship—" She didn't need to finish the sentence. The thought alone was unbearable. Kazil had never feared war. He had never doubted victory. But for the first time in his life, he understood what it meant to stand at the mercy of something far greater. Slowly, he turned toward his command console, his claws moving with reluctant precision. He accessed the Dominion's deep space relay, preparing to transmit an encrypted message to the High Council. It would be the most difficult message he had ever sent, and it would mark the first time in the history of the Zorth Dominion that they acknowledged an enemy as an equal. As he prepared the transmission, his eyes lingered on the final data scan of the human warship. Its hull still gleamed in the void, untouched by their greatest weapons, a testament to its power, a symbol of something far worse than an invading force. The humans had not come to conquer. They had come to warn them, and if the Dominion did not heed that warning, Kazil had no doubt that the next time they faced a human warship, there would be no mercy, and no escape. The High Council of the Zorth Dominion wasn't known for patience. They ruled from a station orbiting Zorvok, the Dominion homeworld, a world untouched by war, its skies clear, its cities vast. It was the heart of an empire that had never known true defeat. Until now. Admiral Kazil stood before the holographic council chamber, his mandibles tight, his claws locked behind his back. Around him, the towering forms of the Zorth High Council members flickered in holographic light, their expressions unreadable. He had just delivered his report. The room had been silent ever since. "You lost an entire fleet," one of the counselors finally said, his voice cold and measured. "To a single warship," another added, the disgust in his tone barely concealed. Kazil bowed his head slightly. "Yes." The silence stretched again. The weight of failure pressed against his exoskeleton, but he forced himself to stand tall. He was a warrior. He would not cower. One of the counselors leaned forward, his black eyes narrowing. And you claim this human vessel allowed you to retreat? Yes. The counselor's mandibles twitched in thought. Curious. If their technology is so superior, why did they not finish you? Because they wanted us to tell you, Kazil said. His voice was firm, but beneath it was an emotion he had never felt in a war room before. Uncertainty. It was a warning. The council chamber filled with murmurs. The Zorth Dominion did not receive warnings. They issued them. They conquered, they crushed, they did not negotiate. And yet here they were, discussing whether they had a choice. Finally, Supreme Counselor Yovak spoke, his voice like grinding stone. You expect us to believe that a primitive species, barely worthy of recognition, has not only surpassed our technology, but also chooses not to use it to its fullest extent. I do not expect you to believe, Kazil said. I only tell you what I have seen. More silence. Zur, standing beside him, chose that moment to speak. We must consider that the humans are not simply another species to be conquered. They have prepared for this moment, perhaps for centuries. We do not know how long they have been waiting for us. The thought sent a chill through the chamber. The Zorth were ancient, but what if humans had studied them before the Dominion had even acknowledged their existence? What if they had designed their warships to counter Zorth technology? What do you suggest? Supreme Counselor Yovak finally asked. Kazil hesitated. He knew what he had to say, knew that the words would be considered treasonous by some, but survival was more important than pride. We must establish communication, he said. We must speak with them, understand their motives. If we assume they are an enemy without knowing their true intent, we may doom ourselves. The chamber erupted. Negotiation? One counselor hissed. You suggest bending the knee? Another spat. We should rally the full Dominion fleet and erase them before they become a true threat. Kazil remained silent, letting them argue, letting them rage. Until Zur spoke again, her voice cutting through the noise like a blade. You assume we can defeat them? The words hung in the air like a funeral dirge. The counselors went silent once more. None of them liked the thought. None of them wanted to entertain it. But none of them could deny it. Yovak's cold gaze locked onto Kazil. Very well, he said at last. You have fought them. You have seen their power firsthand. He leaned forward. If you were human, and the Dominion sent an envoy, what would you do? Kazil hesitated only a moment. Then he answered, I would kill them all, to send a message that no peace would ever be possible. The chamber filled with quiet tension. Then why should we expect the humans to react any differently? Yovak pressed. Kazil exhaled slowly. Because they already let us go. They have already proven they do not need to kill us to make their point. And if their point is merely delayed destruction? Then we are already doomed. Yovak studied him for a long moment. Then, to Kazil's surprise, the Supreme Counselor let out a slow, rattling chuckle. You have grown wiser, Admiral. Kazil was not sure it was a compliment. Yovak turned to the others. We will deliberate on this. In the meantime, Admiral Kazil, you are to prepare a second fleet. Not for war, but for contact. You will find the humans. You will discover their true nature. He leaned forward, eyes gleaming. And if they prove to be a threat, then we will burn their worlds before they burn ours. Kazil bowed, though unease crept into his bones. The Dominion had only ever known conquest, but he was beginning to fear that they were not the hunters in this encounter. They were the prey, and humanity had yet to show its full hand. The Zorth Dominion had always believed in overwhelming force. When diplomacy failed, they sent warships. When warships failed, they sent entire armadas. They had conquered countless species this way, never once facing an enemy that could stand against them. But the humans had shattered that belief. Admiral Kazil stood at the bridge of his new flagship, the Vorax Wrath, staring at the vast expanse of space before him. The fleet assigned to him was smaller than the one he had lost, 20 war cruisers instead of 50. The High Council had no interest in wasting resources on an unnecessary war. If negotiations failed, they would simply retreat and plan their next move. Except Kazil knew the truth. If humanity was as powerful as they suspected, there would be no second chance. "Admiral," Zir said beside him, breaking his thoughts, "we are approaching the Terran relay point." Kazil exhaled slowly. The humans had been cooperative. After their last encounter, they had not retaliated, had not followed the retreating Zorth fleet. Instead, they had sent a set of coordinates, a meeting place, deep in the void between their territories. The fact that they had allowed the Zorth to set the terms of engagement was unsettling. It suggested confidence. It suggested they knew they held the upper hand. "Activate long-range scans," Kazil ordered. The bridge fell into tense silence as data streamed in. There was only one vessel in the designated meeting point. One human warship. The same one that had obliterated half his fleet. "Why only one?" Zir muttered, her mandibles twitching. "Do they believe this is enough?" Kazil knew better. "They do not believe, Commander. They know." A communication request flashed across the bridge's interface. The humans were reaching out first. That, in itself, was another display of power. They had not waited for the Dominion to demand terms. "Accept the transmission," Kazil ordered. The main screen flickered, and a human appeared. Unlike the Zorth, whose carapace and mandibles made them look sharp and predatory, the human was soft-skinned, almost unimpressive in stature. Their species lacked natural armor, lacked claws, lacked any of the physical advantages that defined a predator race. And yet, Kazil had never felt more threatened by a single being in his entire life. The human was clad in dark gray armor, decorated with emblems Kazil did not recognize. Their eyes were piercing, calculating. Their expression was calm, almost too calm. "This is Captain Elias Ward of the Terran Federation warship Indomitable," the human said. His voice was even, controlled, but there was something underneath it, something sharp and unyielding. Kazil straightened. "I am Admiral Kazil of the Zorth Dominion. I have been ordered to establish communication between our species." Captain Ward tilted his head slightly, as if evaluating him. "So, after centuries of conquest, the Zorth finally wish to talk." Kazil did not rise to the bait. "Our previous engagement proved enlightening." A ghost of a smirk touched Ward's lips. "I imagine it did." Zir stepped forward, her tone clipped. "Our High Council wishes to know your intentions. The Dominion does not tolerate threats lightly." Ward's smirk vanished. His gaze hardened. "Then your High Council should consider its next actions very carefully," he said. The tension on the bridge thickened. The Dominion was used to being the ones issuing ultimatums. Now they were the ones receiving them. Kazil narrowed his eyes. "Are you suggesting that humanity seeks war?" Ward leaned forward slightly, his expression unreadable. "We are suggesting that humanity will not bow." A heavy silence followed. Kazil chose his next words carefully. "What is it that your people want?" Ward studied him for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was quiet, but the weight behind it was impossible to ignore. "We want you to understand something, Admiral. The Dominion is not invincible. You are not the apex predators you believe yourselves to be. Your conquests have been one-sided because you have never encountered a species willing to fight you on equal ground." His gaze darkened. "But we are not only willing, We are prepared. A chill ran through Kazil's exoskeleton. This was not bravado. This was not a desperate species clinging to survival. The humans were speaking as if they already knew the outcome of this conflict. Kazil could feel the eyes of his crew on him, waiting for his response. "We have no wish to escalate this conflict unnecessarily," he said carefully. Ward's expression remained unreadable. Then, after a long pause, he said, "Then you'd best ensure your High Council understands that." The transmission cut. Kazil stood there, staring at the now empty screen. His mind churned. This conversation had changed nothing. No formal agreements had been made. No peace had been secured. And yet, in his core, Kazil understood something terrible. The Dominion had never faced a true war. Not until now, and he was no longer sure if they would survive it. The bridge of the Vorax wrath remained silent long after the transmission ended. No one spoke. No one dared to. The weight of Captain Ward's words still hung in the air like a toxin, seeping into the minds of every officer present. Zur was the first to break the silence. "They know they're stronger than us." Her voice was quiet, but there was no mistaking the edge of fear beneath it. Kazil exhaled slowly, turning to face his command crew. "Yes," he admitted. "They do." It wasn't arrogance from the humans, not an idle threat. It was a simple, terrifying truth. The Dominion had always believed themselves superior, unchallenged. Every species they encountered had either fallen or submitted. They had never met an enemy that did not fear them. And yet, here the humans stood, not just unafraid, but expecting a confrontation. "We should relay this to the High Council," one of the officers suggested, his mandibles twitching nervously. They must decide how to proceed. Kazil's claws tapped against the console. "No," he said firmly. "Not yet." The crew turned to him, surprised. Zir's gaze sharpened. "You intend to delay?" "I intend to understand," Kazil corrected. "Something is missing here. The humans should be more aggressive. Their warship could have annihilated us again, yet they didn't. They allowed us to make contact." "Because they know they hold the advantage," an officer growled. "Perhaps," Kazil conceded. "But if they wanted war, they would have already started it. Instead, they are waiting." His mandibles clicked together thoughtfully. "That means there is something they fear." Zir frowned. "You think they fear us?" "No," Kazil admitted. "Not us. Something else." The bridge fell silent once more. It was an uncomfortable thought, but one Kazil could not ignore. The humans had every reason to push their advantage, yet they did not. That meant they were not acting from pure strength alone. There was something they were weighing, something they wanted the Dominion to realize on their own. A test. Kazil's exoskeleton tensed at the realization. "This is a game to them," he murmured. Zir's mandibles twitched. "A game." "They are waiting to see how we respond," Kazil said. "If we lash out, they will strike us down like they did before. If we retreat, they will know we are weak. But if we hesitate, if we stall, if we fail to commit, then they will see us as indecisive. And that might be the worst position of all." Zir's gaze darkened. "Then what do we do?" Kazil straightened. His mind had already made its decision. "We test them back," he said. Murmurs spread through the crew, but Kazil ignored them. He turned back to the console, inputting a command. The Dominion fleet was still stationed at the edge of the relay point, ready to return to home territory and report. Instead, Kazil ordered a smaller detachment, just 3 ships, to break off and follow the human warship at a distance, not in open hostility, but in silent observation. A provocation, but not an attack. A statement, but not a declaration of war. The humans wanted to see if the Zorth understood the situation. Now, Kazil would see if they understood what it meant to be watched as well. Zur hesitated. And if they retaliate? Kazil's mandibles tightened. Then we will finally have our answer. The Dominion had spent centuries assuming they were the only true force in the galaxy. Now, for the first time, they had to ask themselves a terrifying question. What if they weren't? What if humanity had also spent centuries in the shadows, watching, waiting, preparing? And what if this was not the first time they had faced an empire like the Zorth Dominion? The fleet moved. The game had begun. Kazil only hoped they were ready for what came next. The 3 Zorth war cruisers followed the human vessel at a calculated distance, their sensors locked onto its movements. It did not react. It did not break formation. It simply continued its course, as if daring them to make a move. Admiral Kazil sat rigid in his command chair, mandibles tight as he observed the long-range scans. The Indomitable, the same warship that had shattered his fleet, remained eerily silent. It had not attempted to shake off its observers. It had not deployed countermeasures. This was not normal. A species as advanced as the humans should have noticed them by now, should have responded in some way. But there was nothing. Zir stood beside him, her claws clicking against the console. "This is unsettling," she admitted. Kazil agreed. "They are aware of us. They want us to follow them." The question was, why? For hours, the pursuit continued. The human ship moved deeper into uncharted space, far beyond the territories of either species. The Zorth had expected them to head toward their home system or a fleet stronghold. Instead, they were heading into the unknown. "What is out here?" one of the officers muttered. Kazil tapped into the star charts. The system ahead had no official records, no habitable worlds, no signs of past civilization. It was a void, just empty space. "Something isn't right," he muttered. Then the human ship finally acted. A transmission request appeared on the screen. Not a standard Dominion frequency, but a direct connection to him. Kazil hesitated only a moment before accepting it. The screen flickered to life, revealing Captain Elias Ward once again. He looked no different from before. Calm, unreadable, dangerous. "You've followed us far enough, Admiral," Ward said. "I think it's time we talked." Kazil leaned forward. "Then speak." Ward nodded slightly. "I see you're starting to ask the right questions. Why didn't we attack? Why haven't we pushed further into Dominion space? And most importantly, why are we leading you out here?" Kazil remained silent. He would not give the human the satisfaction of seeing his uncertainty. Ward's expression darkened. "You think the Dominion is the apex power in this galaxy. You think your fleet is unmatched, your technology supreme. But tell me, Admiral, do you even know what lies beyond your own borders?" Kazil's mandibles twitched. "Explain." Ward exhaled, as if weighing his words carefully. Then he gestured to the space around them. "You've spent centuries conquering the weak," he said. "You expand, you subjugate, you believe yourselves invincible. But you've only ever fought enemies smaller than you. You've never faced an empire your equal, or worse, one stronger than you." Kazil felt something cold settle in his gut. Ward continued. "The reason we let you go after our first encounter wasn't just to show you our strength. It was because we needed you to understand something." His gaze sharpened. "You are not the greatest threat in this galaxy, and you are about to find out why." Before Kazil could respond, the Indomitable sent out a pulse, a massive energy burst that rippled across the system. The Zorth warcruisers immediately detected it. Their sensors flared with activity. The void ahead of them shifted. And then, something answered. The darkness of space twisted. A tier in reality itself opened, massive and unnatural. From within, a shape emerged. It was a warship. No, something beyond a warship. A vessel unlike anything Kazil had ever seen, dwarfing even the Indomitable in size. Its hull was a jagged, twisted mass of dark metal, pulsating with eerie blue energy. Its weapons began to charge. Kazil's blood turned to ice. Ward's voice came through once more, quiet and grim. "You've spent centuries thinking you were the hunters, Admiral." His eyes locked onto Kazil's. "Welcome to the real galaxy." And then the unknown vessel fired. The blast from the unknown warship tore through space like a rift in reality itself. Kazil barely had time to react before the energy wave slammed into his fleet. One of the 3 Zorth warcruisers vanished instantly, its hull disintegrating into nothingness. No explosion, no wreckage, just gone. The second ship veered off course, its shields collapsing under an invisible force. Sparks flared across its surface as its power systems overloaded, leaving it crippled and adrift. "Hard, evasive maneuvers," Kazil barked. The Vorak's wrath shifted, engines burning at full thrust as it attempted to reposition. Kazil's claws dug into the armrests of his command chair as alarms blared across the bridge. "This is impossible," one of his officers cried. "We detected nothing before the attack." Kazil's mind raced. The unknown warship had not fired a traditional energy weapon. There had been no plasma bolts, no torpedoes, no railgun slugs. Whatever it had used, it bypassed conventional defenses entirely. Zur's voice was sharp with urgency. "Admiral, we must retreat!" Kazil hated the word, but for the second time in his life, he knew there was no choice. "All remaining ships, fall back!" The surviving warcruiser complied, its thrusters flaring as it limped away. The Vorak's wrath followed, banking hard as the unknown vessel shifted its aim. But before it could fire again, another energy pulse rippled through space. Not from the alien warship, from the Indomitable. The human vessel released a burst of concentrated gravimetric energy, distorting the space around them. The unknown warship faltered, as if momentarily disrupted by the pulse. Its weapons dimmed, the eerie blue glow flickering. Kazil's heart pounded. The humans knew about this enemy. They had fought them before. Captain Ward's voice cut through the comms, cold and precise. "Get your ships out of here, Admiral. We'll hold them off." Kazil's mandibles tightened. A part of him wanted to stay, to analyze, to understand. But another part, the part that had faced the human warship and lived, knew better. He had pushed too far. He had followed the humans, believing himself the observer. But in reality, he had been led, not into a trap, but into a lesson, one the humans had already learned long ago. "Initiate jump sequence," Kazil ordered. The bridge crew obeyed, their movements tense and hurried. The Vorak's Wrath's engines roared as the jump drive engaged. Just before the jump sequence completed, Kazil caught one final glimpse of the battle. The Indomitable was no longer just observing, it was attacking, but not recklessly. It moved with practiced precision, launching weapons that seemed designed specifically to counter the unknown warship. Each strike disrupted its energy patterns, destabilizing its shields in ways Kazil didn't understand. The humans weren't just fighting this enemy, they had been studying it. And then, in a flash of light, the Dominion fleet jumped away. The return to Zorth space was met with silence. No victory, no triumph, only unanswered questions. Kazil stood before the High Council once more, but this time he wasn't here to argue for war or superiority. He was here to warn them. "You believe the Dominion is the greatest force in the galaxy," Kazil said, his voice steady but heavy. "But we are not. We have never been. The counselors shifted uneasily. Zur stood beside him, her gaze hard. We encountered an enemy unlike any we have ever seen. It destroyed our ships with ease. And the humans, they knew. The Supreme Counselor narrowed his eyes. Knew what? Kazil exhaled. That there are worse things out there than the Dominion. Silence. The High Council had ruled for centuries under the belief that they were unchallenged, that they were the apex of all things. And now, that belief was crumbling. One of the counselors finally spoke, voice sharp. Then what do you propose, Admiral? Kazil lifted his head. We need to understand the humans, not as enemies, not as prey, but as survivors. His voice darkened. Because if they have been fighting this enemy long before we arrived, then we need them more than they need us. A heavy pause. The High Council did not speak immediately. They never sought alliances. But this time, Kazil saw something new in their expressions. Uncertainty. The Dominion had always looked at the stars with hunger, but now, for the first time, they looked with fear. And in the depths of the void, something watched, something ancient, something worse. Humanity had not been preparing for war against the Zorth Dominion. They had been preparing for something far, far deadlier. And now the Dominion had no choice but to prepare, too, or be the next to vanish. The High Council chamber remained deathly silent. The weight of Kazil's words pressed down on them, suffocating the arrogance that had ruled the Zorth Dominion for millennia. They had believed themselves invincible. They had believed the galaxy was theirs to take. But the humans had shattered that illusion, and now something far worse lurked in the dark. Supreme Counselor Yovak's mandibles twitched as he finally spoke. You expect us to trust the humans? Kazil exhaled. I expect you to recognize reality, Counselor. We have been blind to the dangers beyond our empire. Humanity has not just survived this war, we do not even know how long they have fought it. His gaze hardened. We cannot afford to be their enemy, not when something far greater is at our doorstep. Another counselor scoffed. And if the humans are merely waiting for the right moment to strike us down instead? Kazil's mandibles clicked. Then we die either way. Silence. The truth hung between them like a blade. The Zorth Dominion had spent centuries believing war was simple, either conquer or be conquered. But this was something beyond war. This was survival. Zir took a step forward, her voice firm. We must establish diplomatic contact, not from a place of strength, but from understanding. If we continue to act as if we are the apex predators, we will not just fall to the humans, we will be consumed by whatever lurks beyond them. The words sent a chill through the chamber. For the first time in Dominion history, they were no longer the threat. They were the threatened. Supreme Counselor Yovak leaned back, his cold eyes locked on Kazil. If we do this, if we attempt diplomacy, you realize there is no turning back. Kazil nodded. I do. Another pause. Then, finally, Yovak exhaled. Very well, he said. Proceed with contact. Kazil inclined his head. It was not submission. It was not surrender. It was survival. As he turned to leave, he sent one final transmission to the Indomitable. We understand now. The response came seconds later. Good. Then maybe, just maybe, you'll live long enough to see what's really coming. And in the depths of space, beyond human and Zorth territory, something ancient stirred. Something that neither species could fight alone. The war had never been between the Dominion and humanity. The real war had yet to begin. The distress signal pulsed across the void, a desperate cry for help from the edge of known space. The wreckage of the outpost hung in silence, flames flickering in the vacuum as lifeless bodies floated among shattered steel. The Dominion of Korthak had arrived, and with them came death. Admiral Julian Kane sat in the war room of the UNSC Everest, eyes locked on the holographic projection. The message played again, static-filled but clear enough. The last words of a dying station commander. "This is Outpost Theta 7. Under attack. Unknown enemy. Overwhelming force. Casualties high. Please." Then silence. Kane exhaled sharply. He turned to his officers, their faces grim, waiting for his orders. "How long ago was this sent?" he asked, his voice cold, controlled. 6 hours, sir," replied Lieutenant Vega, her fingers dancing across the console. "Relay satellites were taken down. Message barely got through." 6 hours. That meant whoever did this was still in the area, or worse, they were moving deeper into human territory. "Who the hell are they?" Kane muttered. The answer came from Colonel Beckett, the intelligence officer. "Korthak Dominion, an empire that conquered 3 species in the past century. We've had brief contact, but nothing hostile, until now." Kane clenched his jaw. Humanity had fought wars before, but against each other. This was different. This was an alien force that had wiped out an entire outpost without warning, without reason. "How many ships in their fleet?" Beckett hesitated. "Reports suggest their standard invasion force is around 100 capital ships, with thousands of fighter-class vessels." Silence fell over the room. That was more firepower than humanity had ever faced. "And how many do we have near that sector?" Kane asked. Vega's fingers worked the console again. "Closest task force is 5 ships. Our main fleet is 2 systems away. 5 against 100. Kane leaned forward, hands clasped. "We're not going to win that fight conventionally." Beckett smirked slightly. "No, sir. But humans have never been known for playing fair." Kane allowed a small grin. "Damn right." The room erupted into controlled chaos as officers relayed orders. The Everest, a dreadnought-class warship, would lead the charge. The 5 nearby vessels were ordered to harass the enemy, buying time. Meanwhile, the full might of the Terran Armada would be mobilized. Kane stood, staring at the war map. This would be humanity's first interstellar war, and by the time they were done, the Korthak would learn exactly why humanity had survived for so long. Prepare for war. The UNSC Everest burned through slipspace, her massive hull vibrating slightly under the stress of faster-than-light travel. The bridge was tense, officers moving with quiet urgency as Admiral Kane stood at the center, staring at the countdown timer. 2 minutes until reversion to real space. 2 minutes until they saw the aftermath of the attack on Outpost Theta 7. "Status on the Vanguard fleet?" Kane asked. Lieutenant Vega checked her display. "The Dauntless, Resolute, Vanguard, Indomitable, and Longbow are all on course. They'll drop in within 10 seconds of our arrival." "Good." Kane glanced at Beckett. "What's the likelihood they're still in the area?" The intelligence officer frowned. "High. If they wanted to send a message, they'd leave survivors. The fact that they didn't means they want a foothold in our territory." Kane nodded. "Then we hit them hard and fast. No mercy." A deep klaxon echoed through the bridge. 1 minute to real space transition, announced the navigator. The crew tightened their grips. Everyone knew what was coming. The timer hit 0. With a lurch, the Everest burst from slipspace, stars snapping into place around them. The remains of Theta 7 filled the view screen, twisted metal, drifting bodies, and the eerie flicker of fires consuming what little oxygen remained in the wreckage. And beyond it, like a black storm in the void, loomed the enemy. The Korthak Dominion was here. A fleet of massive insectoid vessels hovered over the ruins. Their ships were angular, covered in chitinous plating, almost organic in design. Glowing bioluminescent veins ran along their hulls, pulsing like a heartbeat. And there were dozens of them. "Jesus Christ," Vega whispered. That's more than 100 ships." Kane's hands curled into fists. "They were waiting for us." "Sir!" A tech officer turned, his face pale. "We're being hailed." Kane's eyes narrowed. "Put it through." The holoscreen crackled, then a figure appeared. It was tall, armored in dark exoskeletal plating, its 4 glowing eyes radiating an unnatural intelligence. Its mandibles clicked before it spoke in eerie, guttural English. "Humans, you are trespassing in Dominion-claimed space. Your species is young, unproven. You were given no permission to expand. Your station was a warning." Kane's jaw tightened. "You slaughtered our people." The Korthak commander tilted its head slightly. "They were irrelevant." Silence filled the bridge. Kane exhaled slowly. Then he spoke with steel in his voice. "You've made a mistake." The alien chittered in amusement. "No, human, you have." The transmission cut. The Korthak fleet shifted, dozens of ships powering their weapons. Kane didn't hesitate. "All ships, engage." The void exploded into war. The first salvo tore through the darkness. Energy beams from the Korthak fleet lanced towards the Everest, their glowing trails illuminating the wreckage of Outpost Theta 7. Kane braced himself as the ship's shields flared, absorbing the impact with a low, thunderous hum. "Return fire!" he barked. The Everest's railguns spat tungsten rounds at near-light speeds, slamming into the lead Korthak vessels. Explosions rippled along their carapace-like hulls, sending debris scattering. The Vanguard fleet, Dauntless, Resolute, Vanguard, Indomitable, and Longbow, joined the fray, weaving between the enemy's towering warships, their Mac cannons roaring with every shot. "Multiple hostiles inbound," Vega shouted. "They're sending swarm ships!" On the view screen, hundreds of smaller, insect-like craft peeled away from the larger Korthak vessels, their organic hulls shimmering with energy shields. They moved in unpredictable patterns, darting toward the human fleet like a cloud of death. "Point defenses! Light 'em up!" Kane ordered. Flak cannons erupted from the Everest's hull, filling space with a storm of lead and laser fire. Dozens of enemy swarm ships were shredded in an instant, their fragile bodies no match for the defensive grid. But there were too many. "The Longbow is taking fire!" Kane turned in time to see the smallest of their ships get surrounded by Korthak swarmers. Explosions raked its hull as it tried to maneuver, but the enemy was relentless. The ship shuddered as a final energy beam sliced through its midsection. A moment later, it detonated. Silence fell over the bridge, only broken by the beeping of consoles and the distant sound of battle outside. Kane clenched his jaw. "They just killed 150 of my crew." His voice was ice. "I want those bastards dead." Beckett leaned forward. "Sir, I've been analyzing their formations. They're strong, but they have one major flaw." "Go on." "They rely too much on their carriers. If we take them out, the swarmers will be left without coordination." Kane nodded. "Target the carriers. Vega, relay to the fleet. Mac rounds, full power." The human warships adjusted their angles, lining up their most powerful weapons. "All ships, fire!" The silence of space was shattered. The Everest's magnetic accelerator cannon discharged, a slug the size of a bus ripping through the void. The other dreadnoughts followed, their Mac round streaking toward the nearest Korthak carrier. The first shot hit dead center, tearing straight through the alien vessel. The second impacted moments later, followed by a third. The carrier convulsed, its bioluminescent veins flickering wildly. Then, with a violent shudder, it erupted into a burning, molten wreck. Kane barely had time to register the kill before another officer shouted, "Sir, the Korthak fleet is shifting!" On the view screen, the enemy warships suddenly reoriented, backing away. Their coordinated aggressive assault had faltered. "They're retreating," Beckett murmured, almost in disbelief. Kane exhaled, his fingers still gripping the armrests of his chair. "No," he said. "They're regrouping." Because the Korthak weren't beaten yet. They were just getting started. The retreat was an illusion. The Korthak didn't flee. They repositioned. Kane saw it happen in real time on the tactical display, their formations stretched, their swarmers dispersing, their capital ships spreading apart just enough to create new firing lanes. "They're adapting," Beckett muttered. "Fast." "Of course they are," Kane growled. "They're an empire, not some pirate fleet. They've conquered 3 species already. We're just another target." But they were about to learn that humans don't go down easy. "Vega, I need status on the fleet." The lieutenant scanned her console. "The Indomitable took a direct hit to its engines. She's dead in the water. The Resolute lost half its forward batteries. The Dauntless and Vanguard are still combat ready." "And the enemy?" "4 capital ships destroyed, including the carrier. But they've still got more than 80 ships in the field." Kane gritted his teeth. They had inflicted damage, but it wasn't enough. The Korthak fleet was too large, too well coordinated. Their losses barely slowed them down. If humanity wanted to survive this fight, they needed to change the rules. Kane turned to Beckett. "You said the Korthak rely on carriers to coordinate their swarmers. What about their command ships? Who's running this show?" Beckett's eyes lit up. "They're hive ships. Each fleet operates under a single Korthak Warmaster aboard a designated flagship. Kill the Warmaster, and the entire battle group falls into disarray." Kane's lips curled into a grin. "Then that's our play." Vega's fingers flew over the controls. "Scanning. There. That ship." She highlighted a massive, grotesque vessel sitting at the heart of the Korthak formation. Its hull pulsed like a living organism, larger than any other ship in their fleet. "Their Warmaster is in there," Beckett confirmed. Kane cracked his knuckles. "Good. Time to introduce him to human ingenuity." He turned to his officers. "New plan? We make them think we're losing. Full retreat." Silence fell over the bridge. Vega blinked. "Sir?" "You heard me. Order all ships to fall back, make it messy, drop flares, vent some atmosphere, make it look like we're breaking." Kane's eyes gleamed with deadly intent. "We're baiting them in." Vega nodded and relayed the command. Across the battlefield, human warships peeled away, firing erratically as if their formations were collapsing. Plasma beams from Korthak ships lanced through the retreating vessels, striking shields, clipping hulls. And just as Kane predicted, the Korthak took the bait. The enemy pursued. The Warmaster's hive ship, surrounded by elite Korthak escorts, advanced to deliver the final blow. "Now," Kane said, voice deadly calm, "hit them with everything we've got." The trap was sprung. The human fleet whipped around with surgical precision, weapons primed and ready. The Korthak were caught mid-maneuver, expecting a retreat. Not a counterattack. The Everest's Mac cannon fired first, sending a tungsten slug straight into the hive ship's forward hull. The round tore through its defenses, splitting chitinous armor open like a wound. The Dauntless followed, launching a salvo of high-yield missiles, each warhead slamming into the flagship's exposed interior. The hive ship shuddered. Inside, chaos erupted. Korthak officers scrambled, their Warmaster screeching in fury as flames and decompression vents ripped through his vessel. And then the Vanguard delivered the final blow, an overcharged plasma lance straight into the flagship's core. The hive ship exploded. A shockwave rippled through space, scattering debris, sending smaller vessels tumbling. The Korthak fleet hesitated, their perfect coordination shattered. and Kane knew exactly what to do next. "Push the attack," he roared. "Make them pay." The humans counterattacked with fire and vengeance. The Korthak had come expecting prey. Instead, they had awakened warriors. The destruction of the Korthak hive ship sent a ripple through the battlefield. The once coordinated alien fleet hesitated, as if unsure of what to do next. Their formation, once a precise war machine, fractured. Some ships stopped firing entirely. Others wavered, shifting erratically as if awaiting new orders that would never come. Kane saw the hesitation and pounced. "All ships, press the attack!" His voice rang with authority. "Break their lines, take out their heavy hitters, and push them out of our system!" The human fleet surged forward, railguns blazing, missile trails crisscrossing the void. The Everest led the charge, her Mac cannon charging up for another devastating shot. The Dauntless and Vanguard flanked on either side, their point defenses swatting down Korthak swarmers as they cleared a path through the enemy. Aboard the Everest, Vega called out, "Sir." The Korthak fleet is still operational, but we've got a massive dip in their response time. It's like they don't know who's in charge anymore. Kane nodded grimly. Exactly. Their hierarchy is broken. Without their war master, they're operating on instinct. And instincts, they can be exploited. Beckett grinned. Time to teach them what happens when you attack humanity. The Indomitable, despite its damaged engines, held its ground, unleashing a full salvo of torpedoes into the enemy ranks. The warheads found their marks, detonating against Korthak hulls, sending biomechanical wreckage spinning into the void. But the battle wasn't over. "Sir," Vega suddenly shouted, "we've got a Korthak dreadnought charging its main weapon, targeting us!" Kane's stomach clenched as he saw the behemoth vessel shifting its massive, multi-jointed structure, a sickly green glow radiating from what could only be a planet-killer class cannon. It was the kind of weapon that had turned entire fleets into slag. If it fired, the Everest, and likely half their fleet, would be gone. "Not on my watch," Kane growled. "Bring all forward batteries to bear on that ship. Target the cannon's power source." The human fleet unleashed hell. Railgun rounds slammed into the dreadnought's thick armor. Plasma torpedoes detonated across its shields, causing them to flicker and wane. The Vanguard swung around and fired a full Mach shot directly at the enemy's weapon array. The Korthak dreadnought fired. A searing green beam erupted from the monstrous ship, aimed straight at the Everest, but it faltered, the energy stream sputtering as secondary explosions rocked the enemy ship from within. Then, in a glorious chain reaction, the dreadnought's power core detonated. A violent shockwave tore through space as the Korthak warship ripped apart from the inside. Pieces of molten wreckage flew in every direction, some colliding with nearby ships, causing secondary explosions that added to the carnage. The once mighty Korthak fleet was failing. "Sir, the remaining ships are falling back," Vega announced. "They're running." Kane exhaled, allowing himself the smallest moment of relief before steel settled in his eyes. "Do not let them escape," he ordered. "I want every single one of those bastards either dead or limping back home to tell their leaders what happens when you attack humanity." The fleet pursued, picking off retreating vessels with precise, merciless strikes. The Korthak had come to conquer. Instead, they had been humiliated. As the last surviving enemy ships fled into the depths of space, a heavy silence settled over the battlefield. The wreckage of Theta 7 remained, a painful reminder of what had been lost. But amid the ruins, humanity had won its first true war against an alien empire. And Kane knew one thing for certain. This was only the beginning. The battlefield was still. Smoke and debris drifted through the void, illuminated by the flickering light of distant fires still burning in the remains of Theta 7. The last of the Korthak fleet had been either destroyed or forced into retreat, leaving behind only wreckage and the ghosts of the fallen. Admiral Kane stood on the bridge of the Everest, his hands resting on the console as he surveyed the aftermath. Victory had come, but it had not come cheap. "Status report," he said, his voice quieter now. Vega wiped a thin sheen of sweat from her forehead before responding. "We lost the longbow, and the Indomitable is crippled. Casualty estimates are still coming in, but—" She hesitated. "Thousands, sir. Across all ships." Kane clenched his jaw. He had known this battle would cost them. He had prepared for it. But knowing and feeling were two different things. Each name, each life lost, weighed on him. Beckett broke the silence. "We may have won this fight, but this isn't over. The Korthik don't just let things go, they'll send more." Kane nodded. "I know. That's why we're not giving them the chance." Beckett raised an eyebrow. "What are you suggesting?" Kane turned to his officers, his voice firm. "We don't sit back and wait for their retaliation. We take the fight to them." A stunned silence followed his words. Even Vega, always the first to back his orders, looked uncertain. "Sir, are you saying we should go on the offensive? Their territory is deep. Their empire is massive." Kane's gaze was steel. "And now they know that humans won't be easy prey. We have one advantage right now. They didn't expect us to fight back like this. We hit them hard before they can regroup. We strike at their supply lines, disrupt their command structure, force them to waste time and resources trying to stop us." Beckett nodded slowly, a grin creeping onto his face. "Guerrilla tactics. Turn their own momentum against them." "Exactly," Kane said. "They think they can break us. We show them what happens when humans get pissed off." Vega exhaled. "Sir, you know what this means, right? We won't be fighting just one battle. This could turn into a full-scale war." Kane stared at the wreckage outside, at the floating remains of Theta 7. The blood of their people was already on the Korthak's hands. "This war has already started," he said. "Now we make sure it ends on our terms." Vega swallowed, then straightened. "I'll begin fleet-wide coordination." Beckett smirked. "Time to make these alien bastards regret ever hearing the name human?" Kane allowed himself a small smile. The first battle was over, but the war for humanity's survival had just begun. And Kane would make sure the Korthak Dominion never forgot the day they crossed the wrong species. The war had begun. Admiral Kane knew that the Korthak wouldn't sit idle after their humiliating defeat at Theta 7. If they wanted to survive, humanity had to strike first. No hesitation. No mercy. A week after the battle, the Everest and a fleet of 15 Terran warships lurked at the edge of a Korthak-controlled system. Their target, Vorak Prime, a critical Korthak supply hub deep in their territory. Intelligence reports indicated it was lightly defended. Most of the Dominion's forces were still scrambling to recover from their losses. This was their window. Kane stood at the bridge, his hands clasped behind his back as he studied the holographic display. Vorak Prime was massive, a sprawling industrial world covered in biomechanical structures. Dozens of refineries, supply depots, and orbital stations ringed the planet. If they took it out, they wouldn't just be delivering a blow to the Korthak's logistics. They'd be proving that humanity wasn't just defending itself, it was fighting back. "Lieutenant Vega, status on enemy defenses?" Vega's fingers moved over the console. "We're detecting a defensive fleet of 20 warships, but nothing heavier than a battleship. No sign of a war master." Kane nodded. "Then they're not expecting an attack this deep into their space." "Perfect." Beckett grinned. "They think we'll stay on our side of the line. They don't know we don't play by their rules." Kane exhaled. "All right, people. This is it. We go in fast, hit them hard, and get out before they can muster reinforcements. Our priority targets are their fuel depots and shipyards. No supplies, no war machine." A ripple of acknowledgement ran through the bridge crew. "All ships, prepare to engage." The Everest led the charge, dropping from slipspace alongside the rest of the Terran fleet. The human warships exploded into real space, their sudden arrival catching the Korthak forces completely off guard. For a brief moment, there was silence. Then the chaos began. "Enemy ships scrambling," Vega reported. "They're trying to form a defensive line." "Not fast enough," Kane said. "Weapons free. Hit them before they organize." The human fleet opened fire. Mac cannons roared, sending slugs the size of city buses ripping through enemy hulls. Railgun fire stitched across the void, punching holes in the Korthak's organic warships. Missile salvos cut through the darkness, detonating in brilliant flashes of destruction. The Korthak, still struggling to react, tried to mount a defense. Plasma bolts lanced through the battlefield, but the damage was already done. A Korthak battleship took a direct Mac hit to its core, breaking apart in a silent firestorm of debris. Another ship, still launching from a dry dock, was annihilated before it could even power up its shields. "First shipyard is down," Beckett announced. "Fuel depots are next." On the view screen, human bombers streaked toward the surface, releasing high-yield bunker busters into the heart of Vorik Prime's refineries. Seconds later, massive explosions erupted across the planet's surface. Fireballs raged across the industrial complexes, turning the Korthak's own infrastructure into their funeral pyres. "Their defenses are collapsing," Vega shouted, barely able to contain the excitement in her voice. "They're pulling back!" Kane's eyes narrowed. "They're not retreating! They're calling for help!" And he was right. Suddenly, new contacts blinked into existence on the sensor grid, the telltale energy signatures of Korthak reinforcements. Kane's gut tightened. "Damn it, we've overstayed our welcome." Vega paled as she scanned the readings. "Sir, we've got multiple heavy warships inbound. These are bigger than anything we've fought before." Kane turned back to the display. On the far edge of the system, 3 massive vessels emerged from slipspace, each one dwarfing even the Everest. Their hulls pulsed with energy, their weapons glowing ominously. Beckett let out a low whistle. Well, shit. The Korthak had sent their war juggernauts, and they were coming straight for the human fleet. Kane made a snap decision. "We've done enough damage. All ships, fall back." The human fleet began its tactical retreat, firing as they went, covering their escape as the juggernauts bore down on them. The massive Korthak warships fired, sending devastating beams of green energy cutting through space. One of the smaller human destroyers, the Valiant, was hit mid-maneuver, its hull splitting apart before it detonated in a flash of light. Kane clenched his fists. "Move faster, damn it!" The Everest's engines burned at full power, dodging through the debris field as the fleet made its way back to the slipspace window. More enemy ships poured into the system, but the humans had already done their damage. "Sir, we're clear!" Vega shouted. Kane didn't hesitate. "All ships, jump now!" One by one, the human warships vanished into slipspace, leaving behind nothing but destruction and burning ruins. Hours later, aboard the Everest, Kane stood in the dim glow of the war room, watching the footage of the attack. Vorik Prime burned. They had destroyed 3 shipyards, 7 fuel depots, and crippled the enemy's local fleet. They had dealt a serious blow to the Korthak war machine. But Kane knew this wasn't over. The Korthak weren't just going to let this slide. They would come back, harder, angrier, and next time, they'd be prepared. Beckett stepped beside him, crossing his arms. "We hit them where it hurts, but they're going to hit back, soon." Kane nodded. "Let them come." He turned, his gaze like cold steel. "Because now, We're ready. The war had begun in earnest, and humanity wasn't going to stop until the Korthik were wiped from the stars. The Korthik response came faster than anyone expected. Barely a week after the assault on Vorak Prime, humanity's outer colonies detected massive fleet movements. Not just skirmish groups or scouting parties. This was a full-scale war armada. The Korthak weren't just retaliating. They were coming to exterminate humanity. Admiral Kane stood in the war room of the Everest, staring at the holographic projections of incoming Korthak forces. The display showed multiple converging fleets, their trajectories aimed directly at human-controlled space. "Jesus Christ," Vega whispered. There's at least 400 warships." The bridge was silent. Even Beckett, usually full of smug confidence, looked grim. Kane exhaled slowly, his hands resting on the table. "They're not playing around anymore." "They're not just hitting back," Beckett said. "They want to wipe us out." Kane's jaw clenched. "Then we give them a fight they'll never forget." He turned to Vega. "What's our fleet strength?" She pulled up the numbers. "After the Vorak assault, we're down to 86 warships across all sectors. That includes dreadnoughts, carriers, and escort ships. We're outnumbered almost 5-1. "Not ideal," Beckett muttered. "Not impossible, but not ideal." Kane's eyes narrowed. "Then we don't fight them head-on. We bleed them dry." Beckett smirked. "You've got a plan, don't you?" Kane nodded. "We use what humanity has always used to survive: strategy, deception, and sheer stubbornness." He turned back to the war map and outlined the plan. Phase 1. The Gauntlet. Instead of meeting the Korthak in open battle, humanity would force them to fight on our terms. Kane pointed at 3 key systems: Echo 9, Meridian Prime, and Hell's Gate. These weren't major colonies, but they sat along the fastest slipstream routes into the core worlds. "We turn these systems into kill zones," Kane said. "Mines, orbital artillery, automated turrets, stealth strike groups. We make them pay for every inch they take." Vega nodded. "It'll slow them down. Maybe even cripple their front-line forces before they reach our major planets." Beckett grinned. "And if they break through?" Kane's expression hardened. "Then we hit them with Phase 2. Phase 2. The Executioner Strike." Kane zoomed in on the largest Korthak warship leading the assault, a Leviathan-class dreadnought unlike anything humanity had faced before. The Korthak overlord himself was rumored to be aboard. "We take out their leadership. No War Master, no Central Command, just chaos." Vega whistled. "That thing makes the Everest look like a patrol boat. You're saying we kill the Overlord?" "Exactly," Kane said. "Cut off the head, and the body falls apart." Beckett chuckled. "A long shot, but I like it. How?" Kane turned to the Everest's AI interface. "Athena, give me a probability assessment." The AI's smooth voice filled the room. "A direct assault has a 12% chance of success. However, a coordinated infiltration and sabotage mission raises success probability to 48%. If additional diversionary tactics are applied, likelihood of enemy disarray increases to 72%. Beckett grinned. "I love those odds." Kane turned back to his officers. "We make them bleed, we break their fleet, and we end this war before it truly begins." Silence filled the room. Then Vega nodded. "Let's do it." Beckett smirked. "Time to show the Korthak why messing with humans was the worst mistake they ever made." Kane gave the final order. "Prepare for war." The Korthak Armada arrived at Echo 9 3 days later, and the slaughter began. The gauntlet had begun. The Korthak Armada arrived at Echo 9, a seemingly insignificant system on the outer edge of human space. To them, it was just another stepping stone on their march toward total conquest. They expected resistance. They did not expect hell itself. The bridge of the Everest was silent as Admiral Kane watched the Korthak fleet emerge from slipspace. Massive insectoid warships glided through the void, their bioluminescent hulls pulsing with an eerie rhythm. The lead vessel, a Leviathan-class dreadnought, dwarfed even the Everest. Its spiked hull glowed with stored energy, ready to unleash a planet-killer blast at a moment's notice. Vega whispered, "Jesus, there's so many." Kane didn't flinch. His fingers tightened into a fist. "Let them come." Beckett grinned. "They have no idea what they're walking into." The Korthak fleet surged forward, undaunted, preparing to sweep through Echo 9. They believed they would encounter only minor resistance, a handful of human warships, maybe some orbital defenses. They were wrong, because Echo 9 had been transformed into a death trap. As the Korthak fleet advanced, hundreds of stealth mines, carefully deployed days in advance, activated simultaneously. A sudden storm of detonations ripped through the first wave of enemy ships. Explosions blossomed across their hulls, shredding smaller vessels outright and crippling larger ones. The Korthak, taken completely off guard, tried to pull back, only to trigger even more mines. The comms crackled. "Korthak fleet slowing. They're pulling into a defensive formation." Kane smirked. "Not fast enough." Hidden within the debris field, human stealth frigates powered up their weapons. "All units, engage." The Dauntless, Valiant, and Revenant emerged from the void, launching a devastating first strike on the confused Korthak forces. Railgun rounds punched through weakened shields. Torpedoes tore into exposed reactor cores. An entire enemy cruiser split in half, its burning remains tumbling through space. Aboard the Everest, Vega shouted, "They're trying to reorganize." "But they're in total disarray." Beckett grinned. "Like cornered animals." Kane's voice was ice cold. "Now we go for the kill." The Everest charged forward, leading the main fleet into the chaos. The Korthak fought back hard, their plasma cannons scorching space with deadly green energy. A human destroyer, the Triumph, took a direct hit, exploding in a blinding fireball. But the humans didn't falter. The Everest's Mac cannon fired, its tungsten slug tearing straight through a Korthak battleship, ripping it apart in seconds. The Vanguard unleashed a barrage of missiles, targeting the Korthak command vessels. Explosions engulfed the battlefield. The once unstoppable Korthak armada was collapsing. And then, the moment Kane had been waiting for. "The Leviathan-class dreadnought is moving in," Vega shouted. "They're charging their main cannon." Kane's jaw clenched. This was the moment of truth. "All ships, focus fire on that dreadnought, now." The final battle for Echo 9 was about to begin, and humanity would not break. The Leviathan-class dreadnought loomed over the battlefield, its grotesque insectoid hull glowing with sickly green light as it prepared to fire its main weapon. Admiral Kane watched the energy readings spike. This was it. If that cannon fired, it wouldn't just take out a ship, it would rip a hole through the entire human fleet. "We have 60 seconds before it reaches full charge," Vega shouted. Kane didn't hesitate. "All ships, focus fire on that dreadnought!" The fleet shifted, every railgun, every missile launcher, every Mac cannon now locked onto one target. The Everest fired first. The tungsten slug screamed through the void, slamming into the dreadnought's armor. The impact shattered outer plating, sending molten chunks of alien metal spinning away. A second later, a barrage of missiles from the Dauntless and Vanguard struck, pummeling the dreadnought's forward section. But the Leviathan was a monster. Despite the damage, it kept charging. Kane's teeth clenched. "Damn it, we're not hitting it hard enough." Beckett's voice cut in, sharp and urgent. "Sir, we need to hit the power core directly. That's the only way to shut down that cannon." Vega's fingers flew across her console. "There's an exposed energy conduit near the ventral side. but we need to get under that thing to hit it. Kane made his decision in half a second. Prepare a suicide run. We take the Everest straight into its underbelly. The bridge went silent. Even Vega looked stunned. Sir, if we get that close, we die if we don't. Kane's voice was steel. We move in. We fire everything we've got, and we cripple that ship before it wipes us off the map. Beckett grinned. Hell of a way to go. Nobody's dying today, Kane snapped. We do this right, we walk away. He slammed the ship-wide comms. All hands, brace for impact. We are taking the Everest into the kill zone. The Everest's engines roared as the massive dreadnought